By the end of this video, you will have a better understanding of what to play in between chords. Instead of feeling stuck on one chord from the one to the next, just playing the root note, even though you can keep time, you can hold the energy and everything, but you're feeling stuck because you don't know the options from one chord to the next. By the end of this video, you will have a better understanding about that because, let's be honest, creating your own bass lines, that's where the fun part is, not just holding down the root. It's a cold day in Norway, so I'm going to keep the scarf on. I hope that's okay with you, because it's cold here and the electricity prices is high as well. Anyways, I want to give a big shout out to Arne Garvik. He is the reason for this video because he was kind enough to send me a message saying that he believes in the channel, it looks good, but he gave me some advice on how to maybe get more visible for other bass players and also, you know, possibly get more followers. So I really appreciate your advice, Arne. Thank you. And I hope I can repay you with this video. So Arne has a dilemma because he is able to play root notes on songs and keep the time, but he feels stuck in knowing what to do in between chords. And at the same time, Arne says that he can play some somewhat complex groovy bass lines, but still, when you only play what you're being told to play, when you're only if you're only following tabs, or if you're just following the root notes and you're just like going from one to the next and maybe just have a 1/5 support, then playing is not necessarily a lot of fun because you're not adding anything of your own playing to the part. So that's what we're going to focus on today: what to play in between chords. And I just got to say this before we start digging in. If you like this video, if you want to support my channel, please click the subscribe button. I would be deeply honored, and please go to the community tab and answer some of the questions there. And if you want a particular topic that that you would like me to cover, for example, if there's something else that you are struggling with, just like Arne sent me a message and getting this video now, send me one and I will maybe make a video for you too. All right, thank you very much. Now, first thing we need to talk about when finding the notes to play in between chords. We firstly need to talk about something called passing notes. Now, this is originally a theory that comes from walking bass, which is a technique that is mostly common in jazz, where you are playing notes on each beat, so it feels like you are walking the bass and then going from one chord to the next. For example, from A minor to D, you can go, right? So it sounds like a scale, but since it's a walking bass, it's like on every beat you go on a new chord, a new note, which is following the chord, and then you go to the next chord like a march. You're walking away. And this leads the band and leads the musicians towards the next chord, which is the walking bass aspect of it. Anyways, it comes from walking bass and it's called passing notes. So passing note is the note that is so if I'm not being too specific, I'm being a little bit broad here, and I'm saying that a passing note is the last note that you're playing until you hit a new chord. Let's not think about when to put in that note, which is the rhythm aspect of it, but let's just say it's the last note that you put before the next chord. For it to be categorized as a passing note, the note has to be either a whole step below or a half step below the root note, or it can be a whole step above or a whole step below, let's do this again. It can be a whole step below and a half step below the root note, and it can be a whole step above and a half step above the root note. Let me give you an example. From A to D, no matter if it's a major, no matter if it's a minor, the last note in that bar of A to the D, should be a passing note, which can be a whole step below and to the root note D. So let's see. So even though it sounds basic, that would be a passing note because it gets the listener to predict the next movement. So that's passing note. It helps the listeners and the musicians, which is kind of more important to that it helps the musicians knowing that the next chord is about to drop. So I'm going to give you the examples of all of the 4 types of passing notes you can do, so you can hear the difference between them. So just in a bar of 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and on the 4th beat, I'm going to use the passing note. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the difference between those notes is that if it's a minor chord towards a D major chord, or the key of the song is G major, and all these theory things, the only thing that differentiates those passing notes are if that particular passing note is within the key or without the key or outside the key. I mean, because picture this. You can use whichever passing note you want, but the passing note which happens to be outside of the key that the song is going in, that the song is in, that passing note in particular is going to be a bit more risky. It's going to be a bit more, let's call it fruity, spicy. It's gonna tear a bit. But if you pick the passing note that is within the key of the song, then that passing note is going to sound less out there. It's going to sound more safe. It's going to sound more real. But it doesn't it doesn't mean that that's the right note to use, but it's definitely the most safe one to use. So in between passing notes, I would recommend you to try and learn the scales a bit more. So that if you are on a minor chord, then you know which passing notes you can use, which would be within the chord and within the scale towards the next chord, because it's all about the chord that you are on, not the one that you're going to. So let's for example's sake, we'll go A minor to D7, A minor 7 to D7, for example, just to be fancy. Now, when you are on the A minor, that's the key you're in. Let me be more specific. That's the scale you're in. So a chord and a scale is more or less the same thing. A chord is a certain amount of notes taken from the scale that it's come from. So when you are on the A minor, then you have, that's the A minor scale, right? Just a natural A minor scale. Now, that means that when you go into the D, which is on the 5th fret of the A string, then you have the fifth note of the A minor scale would be a whole step above the next root. So that's one safe passing note to use. From right? So that's one safe passing note to use. But you can also find another one, because if you go A minor scale from the 4th position, 4th finger position, I mean, then you have a whole step below the passing note as well, the whole step below the chord note as well. So you could go, and that makes a lot of sense, right? or you go. Right? Both of them are very safe and very natural. So again, passing notes is the last note you put before the next chord. And that note should give the listener and the musicians the ability to predict the next chord, or at least recognize movement. All right? Important stuff. Passing notes, get them covered. Go to the scale of the chord that you're on, and then find the next one. All passing notes are valid. It's just that some of the passing notes, 2 out of 4 passing notes, will be outside of the scale. It doesn't mean it's wrong, it's just going to bite a bit more. So in jazz, I think that works perfectly. You can go from A minor, right? So that was a half note above the D7, which is outside of the scale of the A minor. I'm using the sharp 4 or the flat 5, but it bites a bit more, and it's actually kind of nice. It's like it's a lot more tension to it. So even though it's outside of the scale, it doesn't mean it's wrong. Just use it carefully. All right, over to the next aspect of this. Now, the next aspect and the last aspect of this this video that will help you know more about what you can do in between chords. Now, we talked about passing notes, and what we're going to do now is talk about all the notes that you can put in between the root note and the passing note before the next chord. I'm not saying that you always have to have a passing note. That's just a theoretical aspect of it, and obviously you should know about it, but plenty of amazing bass lines doesn't have passing notes in particular, but it's good to know about. Anyways, the notes that you can use from one chord to the next is within the scale of the chord. Now, we need to discuss a topic here, because a scale and a chord is one and the same thing. Try picture scales and chords as the same thing, because a chord is a specific amount of notes from the scale that you play together, right? So from a minor scale, for example, and I want to play an A minor chord, I pick the 1, I pick the 3rd, and I pick the 5th, and then I have an A minor chord. But it all comes from the scale, which is the A minor scale. I just pick 3 notes from that scale. That's the new way of thinking at it and looking at it. So when you're on an A minor chord, just have a, again, we are trying to do this more for fun than to be too specific. So I'm not saying that this way of doing it will work all the time, but I'm saying that this is a great starting out point to start doing this in between chords, and for the most part be right. Okay, so we're going to look at it in 2 ways. If you're on a minor chord and you're going to a next chord, use the minor scale because you're on a minor chord. But again, that will not work all the time, because there are specific minor chords, there are some adjustments to some of the minor chords, but in general, it will work most of the time. And the same theory, just to a major chord. If you're on a major chord, you can use that chord's major scale towards the next note. Again, if there are some specific notes in that major chord which is different than from the scale, that will probably happen a lot of the times. Just do those adjustments, right? It's a part of a bigger theoretical point of view, but in theory and in general, that will give you a good starting out point to do minor scale on a minor chord or a major scale on a major chord. I hope that makes sense. Because an even safer way of doing this is using the pentatonic scale. Because pentatonic is 5 notes out of 7, which are the safest notes to use on a chord. So picture this. On a minor chord, you use the minor pentatonic scale. and on that major chord, you're using the major pentatonic scale. And I think you're going to be probably 3 out of 4 times correct. You're not going to play any wrong notes. And if you do, then you learn from it that it's not a big deal. And if you play the wrong note, that's just a fruity, juicy, spicy passing note that you use. So just own it and you'll be fine. All right. But again, for the sake of the example, an A minor chord to a D7. Then I'm going to use the A minor pentatonic over to the D7. Right? So instead of going, I use the A minor pentatonic and just make something up. For example, even funnier, right? I'm just improvising, winging, or just playing for fun, something that I feel inside would work, and then I just use that scale, the minor pentatonic on the minor chord, and it sounds good. So when I hit the D, on the other hand, I'm going to use the major pentatonic over to the G. So it becomes a 2-5-1, A minor, D7 to G. So I need to be careful here now on the D7. Then I originally couldn't use the major scale in its natural form, because the 7th note is flatted when it comes to a dominant 7 chord, a D7 chord. Again, that's part of a bigger subject on the music theory, so we're not going to focus on that. But as long as I use the pentatonic, I'm going to be fine, right? Then I'm just 1 note off in worst case. So A minor to D7 to G major 7. 2-5-1. So I'm going to use the A minor pentatonic on the A minor, and then I'm going to use the D major pentatonic on the D7. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again. Right, so as you can see on the 1 turn there I did, and that sounds incredible, right? So you go, and the only thing I do there, it's a passing note. I go from the G major to the A minor, and I just use the note in between them, create the motion and the movement towards the next chord, and it's really not within the scale. You can hear that it bites out. It creates like a diminished feel, but it's so simple. But you just need to do it, because it's the fact that you're not gonna stay on that note for a long time. That's what makes the function of the note. Anyway, I think I could talk a million years about this subject. I hope this video sets you on a path to knowing a little bit more about what to do when you're going from one chord to the next. Again, this is a big subject, but start off learning the passing notes. You can use you can do the whole step below and the half step below the next root note, and you can use the whole step above and the half step above the root note that you're going to. And the other aspect is, which is the most fun aspect, pentatonic scale. On a minor chord, you use the minor pentatonic on that chord, and then you use the major pentatonic on a major chord on that chord. So always follow the chord. Go to the chord and then go to that scale. If you like this video, if it helped, send it to a bass player friend of yours who might also need this help. Subscribe to the channel, be a part of the community, send me messages, let me know what you're thinking. I find so much joy in doing this channel, and I hope you can help me taking it to the next level. Thank you very much for listening and watching, and I hope this helped. Thank you.